A new study confirms that summer learning programs can help narrow the achievement gap in the Boston Public Schools. To help us understand the advantages of summer learning are two guests, the president and executive director of Boston Afterschool and Beyond, Chris Smith, and from one of the summer programs, the vice president of the Thompson Island Outward Bound Education Center, Tisha Nguyen. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
I want to start with Chris Smith. Talk about the study. What did they actually do and what did they find?
Yeah, so the Wallace Foundation and RAND, a research organization, chose 5 districts from across the country to participate in a study to determine the effects of high-quality summer learning. It's actually testing the proposition that 2 consecutive summers of summer learning will pay off in school. And so the results that just came out are near-term findings. They're from that first September when 3rd graders were transitioning into 4th grade. So they look at those results. It's a randomized control trial, so it's very rigorous in terms of how the study is conducted, so we can be confident in the results.
Tisha, talk about what happens in your program on Thompson Island.
Okay, so on Thompson Island we have a 5-week summer program where we bring kids out 5 days a week for 5 weeks, and we marry secondary science best practices from the Boston Public School curriculum to hands-on inquiry-based science learning. And we strive for the kids to come away with skills such as perseverance, communication, problem solving, lifelong learning skills while they're learning science.
Now, some of this, I always picture kids climbing or swinging on a rope or something like that.
So our 5-week summer program is not our ropes course program. It is actually a science-based program. So it's the science curriculum married to, for example, literacy best practices from Common Core, because we want to make sure that we are augmenting learning in the summer sessions so the kids can take back these skills to the classroom when they return in the fall. So we'll be focusing on skills like annotation, summarization, so when they go back in school they can use those same tools to help them with reading. Our goal is to help close the achievement gap working with Boston Public Schools.
Chris, what else goes on in these programs that you think might be making things work right?
Well, all of these programs, whether it's Thompson Island or out at Hale Reservation or Courageous Sailing or Tenacity or the Boys and Girls Clubs, YMCAs, what they've committed to do is integrate academics and enrichment so that for the students it's part and parcel of one whole experience. So the lessons they get in math and English in the morning are reinforced during the afternoon through enrichment activities, whether it's exploring the salt marshes on the island or playing tennis or doing archery or learning to sail. And the idea behind it is that young people will become more engaged in their learning. They'll see the real-world application of academic content, and that in doing so, they'll become more motivated to succeed and take ownership of their own learning.
Yeah, I sense there's something different here about the exposure to adults. Tisha, talk about that. What goes on?
So we have our kids in a small group setting. So the kids have more interaction with adults and they are able to learn to communicate more effectively with adults. So they develop the lifelong skills of how do I communicate with adults? What does adult communication look like? What does peer communication look like? What does team building look like? Because for science in particular, a best practice is working in groups, working in teams. Well, to do that, you have to be a really good problem solver, communicator, and have conflict management skills, which is the outward bound process model. So we equip kids with those tools.
And this seems to be a less mechanical kind of communication than what happens when somebody calls on you in the classroom with a question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's more targeted and it's more intentional.
Chris, what else do you see in these? I mean, Tenacity, they play tennis for a while, they read books, but I guess they're also talking with these coaches and mentors a lot too.
They do, and what you see with all these programs, and there are almost 60 now who are looking at those same skills: collaboration, perseverance, critical thinking, self-management. So whatever the intervention, whatever the activity, whether it's sports or outdoor exploration, they're actually not only looking at those skills and improving them, but measuring them together so we can get a sense of what kind of progress kids are making. And although the results of this study are short-term, the approach is really long-term. The skills that Tisha named are important not only for school success, but we now know that they're really important for college success, and ask any HR manager, they're important for career success too.
Tish, what about something like perseverance? How does that pan out when you go back to the classroom world?
Yep. So, great question. In the outward bound process model, it has a step of adaptive dissidence. So you give kids a task that is really challenging, and you expect them to struggle with it. And they actually have to develop perseverance so that they don't fail, they don't give up. They can accomplish the task, but you have to mentor and coach them through it. So giving them that type of experience on the island, when they go back into their classroom and they have a mathematics problem or a science problem, they think back to their experience on the island. How did I work through when I'm getting frustrated and I'm ready to give up? How do I overcome this challenge? So we're equipping them with those lifelong tools, no matter what subject area. We're just marrying it to science on the island.
Or if you don't entirely get it the first time, you realize if you keep trying, it gradually gets better, so you know you're moving in the right direction?
Yep. At the end of the outward bound process, we do a debriefing with the students where we actually talk and think through, okay, let's be clear on what steps you took to overcome this challenge. Let's name them and call them out so that you can recognize them and be aware of them.
Chris, there was an improvement in math, looking at the academic part of this, but not so much in reading or English. Given all the communication here, what do you think is going on with that?
Well, it turns out that first the study showed that participation in this type of summer program, the participants came out with a meaningful advantage in math over kids who didn't participate. With English, it was flat, and we do see some ways to improve that. So the kids who did better tended to have teachers who taught at that grade level. They had orderly classrooms where the expectations were clear. But there's more to learn on how to build that very complex set of skills involved in literacy. And remember, this is just the first study of many coming out. Later this year, we'll see how those kids did for a whole school year. So it could be that the literacy results show up later in the year, or it could be that 5 weeks is simply not enough to move the needle on it.
Chris, what about the difference between the number of kids getting this and the number of kids who should be getting it? And you know, the budget's not too flexible here, so what do you see?
Right, well, I mean, we got right into the findings, but really what this study is testing is, can school districts organize a large-scale voluntary summer learning program? So this is not the summer school of old, as Tisha's describing. It's a very different experience. And the answer is yes, and there's high demand for it. So there was a lottery where nearly 2 times as many kids applied as were selected. So we've seen there's great demand, but 2/3 of the kids who weren't selected did not do anything over the summer. So we have more work to do to create access to these great natural and cultural facilities all over Boston. And that's really what Thompson Island's a part of. It's a community of programs that are trying to improve access for kids and do right by them to get them ready for the school year.
Thank you both very much, Chris Smith and Tisha Nguyen. Up ahead, the report from South Boston with Maureen Dayhill.